right, Gen Z Millennials, this video is for you. The question is, what should I do with my life? And I want to let you know that you're on the right track by asking this question because you're the generation that does not want to enter the American dream game and trade all of your time for money and be burned out at the end of the game with nothing to show for it but bags of money that may or may not have any value at that time. So I just want to let you know that I'm so proud of you for asking this question, first of all, because I feel like a lot of people are coming down on the youngest generation for not wanting to participate in the American dream game. And I'm here to tell you that I spent 1,461 days on a mountain. I decided to throw it all away when I was 44 years old because I didn't feel like I was adding any value to the world. I was working as a wine director in New York City for many years. My best friend was a chef. We would go out for dinners, and every place we went, we got free champagne, free desserts, free food. We went to gallery openings. It was right during the Sex and the City show, and every place that they showcased, we would go and visit. It was the $1,000 shoes and the $500 dresses from Bergdorf's, and we were just living the best life. But at some point, I realized my busboy was making more money than I was as a wine director because he was working hourly and I was working salary, but we worked the same hours. And that was about the time that I realized I'm not gonna take this job title and trade all of my time for money that's not even the equivalent of my staff. So I decided to climb back down the ladder. And so I worked part-time, very minimally, at this amazing restaurant in Soho. I only worked Monday through Thursday mornings, lunch. I never had to get up early. I didn't do brunches. I didn't do dinners. I was just working as a waiter and still living an amazing life because I didn't have any real expenses. I didn't have any kids. And I was just, I still had the beautiful apartment on Riverside Drive, and I was winning the American dream, and it just wasn't fulfilling. And I thought to myself, I'm like, is this all there is? So I want you to remember that question because that was the turning point of my life. Because I realized, I said, well, if I can, I know I'm employable. I know I can always be a busboy or a waiter or a food runner in New York City with my years of experience in hospitality. So I knew that I was above, or I was not above any job. So I decided to just throw it all away and volunteer around the world in exchange for food and shelter. And the first place I went to was Spain, and I ended up staying there for 1,461 days as an organic farmer apprentice on a mountain in isolation with just one other person. And for 5 days of the week, Monday through Friday, that farmer would go and work for money. So I was basically in a silent retreat for 5 days a week for 4 years. And when I came back to New York City, I just realized everyone was just so burnt out and angry and reactive, and I couldn't figure out why I was so happy, even though I was back in New York City and I wasn't working because I knew how to live with very little money. And I ended up getting a part-time job at a hostel, which turned out to be something that I worked at for a few months, and I had free housing there and they gave me a small stipend. So again, I was just living a very minimalist life. I had no possessions. I have like 100 possessions to my name right now, and I have had 100 possessions for about 15 years. But basically, when I went to go volunteer on the mountain, I realized when I came back that we were living in a very done for you world. Meaning when I was on the mountain, there was no place to put my money. I was looking around thinking, where's the shopping? Where's the restaurants? Where's the cafes? Where's the clubs? What do you guys do out here for fun or for life? And everyone just told me, well, life. I thought, well, I don't know what kind of life you're living, but this does not look like life to me. It looks like nature and nothing else. So I realized right away that most of these people didn't trade their time for money because they didn't have any place to put their money. There was no restaurants, no done for you establishments where you could go get a coffee. It was just nature. So no one traded their time for money. We did everything for ourselves. So I realized when I was in New York, the first thing I would always ask myself was, what should I do today? Because everything is done for us, right? I didn't have to hunt for food or grow food. On the mountain, I didn't hunt for food either, but our neighbors did. So we grew our own food, but there was no place to, there was nothing else to do. So I would wake up every morning and have to make a fire because there was no heat. I would have to go check the hen house because I wanted to make sure there was food for the day. We had vegetables in our own garden, but we didn't hunt. But we did have to still do things for ourselves. So it was a really different lifestyle that was very obvious when I came back to New York, that everything is done for us, because where are you going to hunt for food in New York City, right? So I realized that that was the first thing I realized when I came back to New York, was that everything is done for us. The second thing I realized is that everyone lives in concept land. For example, there is no man-made concept in nature. So if you think about the game show Alone, no one is taking money to the game show alone, right? Because who are they going to trade their money with? Money is a man-made concept that only exists in modern day society because we all agree to believe in money and therefore it works. But if you're on a mountain in the middle of nowhere, or if you're on the game show Alone and there's nobody to trade your money with, they're not going to take the money with them, correct? And they're also not going to take their driver's license or their voting registration card, because there is no government on a mountain in the game show Alone, for example. So the guys on Alone are basically food and shelter, and they're not trying to get their 1,000 steps in or their 10,000 steps in, because if they use energy, then they're going to have to replace the energy. And if they don't have any food, then there's no done for you establishments for them to go get some food. So I realized in modern day society, our society is based upon a lattice of man-made concepts, is built upon, I should say, this pile of man-made concepts, like mathematics is a concept, government is a concept, money is a concept, meaning we no longer believe in traveler's checks. And if you do have traveler's checks right now, it's probably going to be really hard for you to trade those with somebody to get any value from it. We believe in cryptocurrency, or at least some of us do, right? So it's a concept that's always changing. And if you go to another country, you have to trade your money for their money, and sometimes you'll get more, sometimes you'll get less, but somebody decided that the exchange rate is going to be what it is based off of a collective belief in the concept of money. So the other concept land is something that doesn't exist in nature. Animals don't believe in concept land, and neither do little kids. So concept land for kids, they don't understand money because they don't ever have to trade their time for money. But the first concept that they're introduced to is Santa Claus, right? So Santa, they tie their identities to Santa because they want to be good little boys and girls, and then they'll get presents. But then after Christmas is over, Santa disappears, and so they don't remember that tying of their identity to that concept until the next year. And then maybe a few years go by and they realize that Santa exists, but he doesn't exist. So they realize that it's a concept that they no longer believe in because it doesn't serve them anymore. And so they drop that belief and they've untied their identities to that external factor. So they're free again. But when you ask a kid the question, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And what do you want to be for Halloween? It's the same syntax, but one is imaginary and one's like a binding contract for the rest of your life. So at 4 years old, you're now tied to this, destination life where you're going to spend the next 30 years, if you want to be a doctor, tying your identity to this external factor, which can be really confusing, because if doctor today is someone who makes the world a better place, but in 30 years from now, doctor is just someone who's pushing prescription pills, the concept has changed over time, but it's really hard for you to change with that concept without being a hypocrite or looked upon as, oh, they can never stick with anything. So concept land is something that I think a lot of us get stuck in, that don't realize that this isn't reality. It doesn't exist in nature, but we do live in modern day society, and we all collectively agree to believe in all of these man-made concepts that are just made up by, people. So mathematics is a concept. So if you don't understand math, it's not because you're dumb, it's because somebody made up this concept of math and you may or may not get it. It's just a concept that we actually teach in our schools, right? So you go to school to learn about government in social studies, and you learn about math. So you learn about all of these external concepts, and it can be confusing because you don't think it's not real, because everybody agrees to believe in it, and you've never been outside of the system like I did. So when I went outside of the system, I realized done for you living is where we live, and concept land is where we live as well. The third thing and the last thing is we're always in a constant state of doing. So after you've become your doctor, spending 3 decades of learning, and you're finally a doctor at the year, 30 years old. Now you're working and you're earning and you're spending and you're paying and you're eating and you're consuming and you're treating because you work hard and you play hard. And that's the behavioral loop of the American dream game: is you work first, you earn money, then you qualify for payments like our mortgage or your car insurance, your car payments, and your Netflix. So you have all of these subscriptions that you can pay now that you have a job that's stable and always have money coming in. But then, of course, you also want to outsource the things like hunting and, making clothing. So you're working, you're trading your time for money, and then you're then filling your time. How do I say it? You trade your time for money, and then you spend your money filling your time, if that makes sense. So you trade your time for money, and then you spend your money to fill your time. So that's what the done for you framework that we live in. And then the behavioral loop that we're in is the work, earn, spend, pay, eat, consume, and treat. And I realized when there's no place to put your money on the mountain, like I said, you don't trade your time for money. So that whole work, earn, spend, pay, eat, consume, and treat, I call the filler cycle, because that's not real life. It's just what we've created so that we can trade our time for money and then find ways to waste our time and spend our money after we've traded our time for money. So this is the filler cycle. It's not fulfilling. And so my whole point of mentioning those three frameworks is that done for you living, it also outsources all of our agency. So you can get really, really reactive when everything is done for you and you don't know how to do anything for yourself. So if you've ever used like a banking app and you can't log in because you changed the password, or you forgot the password and then you have to reset it, and then you can't use an older version of the password. Everything is supposed to be done for you easier, but it's actually very frustrating because you can't do anything for yourself anymore. You can't even get help on the telephone and speak to a live customer service. Everything is automated and it's just frustrating. So done for you living is really at the root of a lot of our anger, because we've outsourced everything, and as well as our agency, which is the ability to control our own lives. So concept land is also going to have a problem with your belief system. So if you've tied your identity to an external factor, like a doctor, and you don't feel like a doctor adds value to the world, when you thought that it would, then it's going to give you a little bit of confliction inside. You're not going to be able to live your life authentically because you've identified yourself as a doctor, and it's not giving you the fulfillment that it once was or may have. And then the third thing is the constant state of doing, the work, earn, spend, eat, consume, treat, the filler cycle of life. So those three things are the three things I realized when I came back from the mountain, is that those are the three core issues that we have. Anything can really be tied back to those three core issues. Any kind of mindset problems, any kind of limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome, because since we do live in concept land, it's really hard to know everything about a concept because it's always changing, right? So the government always has new laws. There's always a new president that's coming in with new ideas, and it's hard to optimize inside of a concept that's always changing. So I feel like a lot of people have imposter syndrome because they've tied their identities too strongly to an external factor, and it's very conflicting inside. So concept land, done for you living, is what causes all the reactivity. And then being burnt out and in distractionville is what I like to call that working, earning, spending, paying, eating, consuming, and treating filler cycle of life. That is the other behavioral loop that we're constantly in. So what should you do with your life? Well, now that you know the problem, like I asked you earlier about that question, is this all there is? When you get that question, when the bloom falls off the rose and you're just tired of doing this endless non-fulfilling cycle of working and earning and spending, you want to go to curiosity lane, is what I like to call it, because curiosity lane is what is going to be the more renewal loop of behavior that you can participate in, and it involves learning, but not learning like you need to go back to school, but learning as in you're curious about something. For example, when the bloom falls off the rose and you're just, is this all there is? You can either go to distractionville and like stream something or doom scroll, or just go in this constant state of doing, which is going to just completely atrophy your brain, and you're just going to lose so much energy because your attention is always, on. So what you want to do instead is learn something that you're curious about. So for example, if someone says, hey, Kalani, I know that you're big into, wellness, have you heard of cold plunging? I'm like, no, what's cold plunging? They're like, oh, I don't know, this guy, Wim Hof, he's like, lives on a mountain, he does all these experiments, and it's supposed to help your immune system. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, yeah, I'll check it out. So I'm curious about it, right? So I'll learn a little bit about it. So I'll just check it out online, and I'll decide if I like it. And then if I do, then I'll embrace it and I'll explore it fully and adapt to whatever it is. And then, see if I like, being in the cold water for a minute or 5 minutes. And then, I'll analyze my data of my exploration, and then I'll either report back to my friend, or maybe make a video of what I learned, and just decide if I want to reinvent myself in this new element that I've explored, or I can just reject it. So I call it the CLEAR, the clear path of life, and it's the renewal energy life, because once you are curious about something and you learn about it and you explore it, you're actually getting your brain to strengthen itself, as opposed to just sitting and doom scrolling and streaming entertainment. So that's the clear path to life. So if you're in this situation where your job is just so mind numbing, what you want to do is share your lived experience. Now, you probably think you don't have any lived experience, but I'm going to give you some examples right now on how you already at your own age, you have lived experience. You just need to basically help someone who is a previous version of yourself. So if you're in college, say you're your last year in college, and you don't have any lived experience yet, right? Well, you actually do, because think about the people who are coming in, the freshmen who don't know, where to go or what to do. So they take the tour of the school, but you can give like a similar tour of, hey, this is the best place to have pizza on Monday nights, and on the weekends these are the best clubs to go to, but you don't want to go there on Thursdays, because it's a different vibe. And you have all of this lived experience that you've been at this school for several years, and you can always package that up and do like a content creation of, this is what I learned from going to this school. This is what I wish I would have learned before I went to this school. This is what I would do if I had to start from scratch and I was going to this school. So you can always package up your learned experience by just being curious about something and learning about it and exploring it, and then analyzing the data, and then report back any patterns. And that's the clear path to creativity. So if you're in a situation where you just don't want to continue the American dream game, you will definitely get more fulfillment by just constantly giving back and adding value to the world through your own lived experience. So anything that you're curious about, anything that you lived through, document it and package it up, a quick PDF on Canva. And that is definitely a much better way to always be able to monetize your lived experience. You can travel around the world and just report back everything that you found, because there's going to be people that are your age who are not able to travel or try new things because they're stuck in the American dream game, and you're going to be the one who's being creative and exploring and learning and sharing and reporting back and just monetizing your lived experience. And you can literally do that for the rest of your life. So that's what I learned from spending 1,461 days on a mountain. Thanks for listening, and chat later.